I think it's fragile. What is always the case when you have the kind of shock that the world had actually beginning in 2007 with the breaking of the bubble, and then the events after that were just the working out of the full consequences, punctuated by events like the collapse of Bear Stearns and then even more the collapse of Lehman Brothers. But those were, you might say, punctuations, consequences of the breaking of the bubble. But among those consequences are periods in which credit markets freeze, people destock, people overstock, so that and that's likely to continue, lots of volatility. Now, one aspect of the volatility is that there will be periods in which things look a little bit better. The euro will get weaker. Europe's, as people focus, say, on Greece's problems or Ireland's problems, and that will help Germany's exports, and Germany will grow, and the rest of Europe will grow, and people will feel for a moment a little bit better. But the fundamental problem is that the underlying problems to the global weaknesses have not been addressed. And so that raises the question, what will fill that hole? And what filled that hole temporarily was government spending. But that's coming to an end. And that's why my own view is that the prospects of a sustained recovery is very bleak. Well, there are many aspects of what I would call the failure of government to deal adequately. Let me talk more about the United States, but some of these issues are more general. The stimulus measure was based on an estimate of a short shock to the system, enabling the economy to go through that shock. But because it underestimated the depth and duration of the shock, it was too small. The second mistake was that they thought that if we just throw enough money at the banks, they'll return to lending. But in fact, what had happened to the financial system over the preceding 10, 15 years really undermined its ability to play the role that it needed to play going forward. So, for instance, there had been a move from banks to the shadow banking system, to securitization, as a major part of the financial system. But securitization required credit rating agencies to give credit ratings to these securities that were being produced, and everybody now recognizes that those ratings don't mean anything. And so that part of the banking system is fundamentally broken. Meanwhile, one of the factors that had led to the crisis was the real estate bubble. Administration, many of the people who were responsible for creating the bubble through the deregulation, lack of oversight, wanted to pretend that there was no bubble. The reality was there was a bubble. Well, the result of that is that many houses are underwater. People owe more money, but they didn't want to do anything about it. So that problem of foreclosures is continuing, even at a higher pace than before. So as I look at the American economy, I see every one of the problems not being much better. So the argument that countries have to cut back is just foolish. And that's particularly true in the United States that I know and many of the other countries where public investments have been starved for 20 years. So we have very high return investments that if we make those investments, we will be much better off. I would hope that the markets would recognize that. Now, there is an implication that we may want to shift more of our spending to investments and away from things that aren't productive. We may have pretended in the past that resources weren't scarce, there weren't budget constraints, but there are. So for me, the lesson for the United States is that we need to stop spending so much money on weapons that don't work against enemies that don't exist, wasting money in Afghanistan, in Iraq, on subsidies to oil companies. There are lots of ways where government spending could be redirected to high return investments and improve our balance sheet.